As a reminder, all attendees will be muted throughout the session. All attendees should note that the webinar is being recorded and a copy of the presentation recording will be sent to your email after the webinar session has ended. The handouts for the session can be located in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. During the webinar, if you have questions, please enter your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. At the end of today's presentation, the BQE team will select questions to answer live. Any unanswered questions will be answered after the webinar session has ended. This presentation is registered for one learning unit with the AIA. Credits will be automatically reported to the AIA for those in attendance for the full hour session. Attendance will be reported within 10 business days. Any certificate of completion will be provided to you. Now we just go over some learning objectives. This webinar will equip you to prepare for ownership transition with strategic and financial planning, cultivate leadership and identify future firm leaders, ensure continuity, growth, and stability during leadership changes, and empower the next generation to pursue innovation, initiatives, and goals. Thank you for choosing to attend this webinar. And now I would like to introduce our presenter, Steve Burns, founder and president of the Well-Designed Firm.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sean, for that introduction. Welcome, everybody. And today's really actually the first time I'll be presenting this topic, so hopefully you can bear with me. I'm going to try and make sure I get through the slides with enough time for you to have some questions at the end. I always look forward to your questions. And we're really going to talk about a topic today that I've really only hinted at in previous webinars, but it seems like the time has really come and we're just going to have to tackle this thing head on. And it's about succession planning and leadership transition. Now, in my current capacity as a business coach and I consult with small AE firms, it's actually one area where I find owners are just not paying attention. And I am going to go into details today, but the fact that most of you are paying attention to some form of a retirement account, meaning you're thinking about your future, but you're not connecting the dots to the fact that your firm is also an investment. So the problem is your retirement account, it's an investment that is typically out of sight, right? It's out of mind. Somebody else is managing it. And you probably don't need to pay attention to it until you're at retirement age. But your firm requires you to deal with that investment. And towards this end, at the end of my presentation today, I'm actually going to be sharing with you a case study of a firm I worked with and what the founder's exit looked like. We're going to look at how much money was invested in the firm by the founding partners and what a successful transition and an eventual exit looked like, both personally and sort of professionally. So don't leave me before the end because I'm really going to be saving the best for last today. Before we dive in, indulge me as I typically ask, just to let me explain where I am on my own journey and how I've come to present this to you today. But I did receive a Master's of Architecture at the GSD, and I immediately moved to Chicago and went to work for SOM there. And it was honestly a magnificent experience. But I did get that 7-year itch, as maybe many of you have had at some point, maybe not 7 years. And I left SOM to launch my first business, BBA Architects. Up until that point, for me, architecture was really the same as it was in school. All that mattered for me was really creating the finest architecture possible. And I learned very quickly that owning a business, it's first and foremost about thinking about a business, and the product of which is really just architectural services. Now, for me, that was an unwelcome awakening. I realized that I needed to grow professionally or maybe risk having this business thing fail. And I would suspect many of you who are here today who own your own businesses have had a similar realization. And maybe my first business book ended up being The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, which is, really about this myth we have about starting our own businesses without the recognition that you have a responsibility as a business owner. You're not just practicing your craft any longer. Anyway, I did end up creating, a few years later, I created my second company, which was a software company. Basically, we built this company to sell the software that I had developed to run my own firm. And I was very surprised because after 2 years of releasing the software publicly, we had about 600 firms, and it was very clear that the potential for substantial growth was really much greater in the software enterprise, and I really needed to put my complete focus on that. So after 14 years running an architectural firm, we had 17 architects on staff. I honestly, I believe we had a really wonderful firm culture, a loyal clientele, and we, of course, developed very refined processes, which is really part of the technology behind the firm. But I also want you to be aware, if you are indispensable to your firm, and I'm going to talk a lot about that today, I'm going to just say good luck if you ever want to step away or you want to pursue some new opportunities. But I did end up selling to 2 of our junior partners, and I'll talk more about that transaction in a few minutes. And now it does occur to me that actually that selling to junior partners seems to be going to be a common theme here today. So by 2010, my software business had about 1,200 firms that were logging in to the platform every single day. And an opportunity came along that was too good to refuse. And I ended up selling my second company to today's sponsor, BQE Software. And I have to be honest, owning a business is really wonderful. You may find it as a way to live a nice lifestyle, but actually it's selling a business, which is, at this point I had done twice now. It's pretty exhilarating, and it's actually really where the true financial rewards can be manifest. And I ended up relocating to Los Angeles, with my family there in 2010. And after my 3-year earnout, the founder had really asked me to become a partner and basically buy into the firm, become the second largest shareholder. And I ended up doing that. It was really a very serious investment for me to buy back stock into someone else's company. Now, you have to think about your exit strategy when you're going to put some money behind this. Now, if you bought stock in a public company, there's an easy exit for you. You just put out a sell order and it's going to be gone within seconds. And architects rarely think about their exit strategy. They don't even think of it opening a business or as an investment. They really look at the firm as simply a platform from which you get to practice your profession. And the barrier to owning an architecture or engineering firm is really very low. You probably just have to hang out a shingle, besides being licensed, of course, and maybe having enough money in the savings account to live for 6 months. But if there was a law that required every business owner to invest, let's say, $1 million in your new business, most every one of us would have to go to the bank or borrow the money. And that bank is going to do some serious due diligence. It's like getting a mortgage. You're going to have to prove to that lender that their money is safely invested with you. They're going to get it back plus some interest. Now, if there was that law, I think only a fraction of firms would exist today, but they all would be beautifully run businesses because every single owner knows they have to look at this as an investment. And unless you're, forgive me on this, unless you're Kanye West or maybe Elon Musk, you don't invest in things that will not bring you a return, or invest in things and then degrade their value. Okay, so anyway, by 2020, our software company at BQE, everything was going along well, and the founder, and we kind of said, let's take some chips off the table. We felt like we had won the Little League championship. We wanted to play major leagues, and we knew that there are people far smarter and more experienced than us. So we ended up selling a majority stake to a private equity firm. And I did do a transition there, and then I've now started my next company, which is the Well Designed Firm. It's really a consultancy where I'm really sharing what is now 4 decades as an architect and as a software entrepreneur and as a business coach, trying to help firms balance this need to serve your clients, but also build a sustainable and a valuable business, something that's more than a lifestyle business, something that actually has some lasting value. And I sincerely believe that your firm should be as elegant and as considered as the architecture you create. Now, as architects, a lot of us will hit our peak in our 60s, long after others probably started winding down their own careers. We often say we're going to maybe work until we die because it's really our passion that drives us. But even for those who plan to work indefinitely, the reality is that retirement accounts aren't just about stopping work. They're actually about giving yourself some options and some financial security. Building value in your firm is critical, and we're going to look really hard into that. But contributing to your 401k or any retirement account is equally important to ensure that you are going to be prepared for any eventuality, whether you choose to step back or maybe, life just decides that, makes that decision for you. When you think about retirement, our minds typically will go straight to these familiar, financial vehicles like the 401k or the IRA, maybe some real estate investments that you have. And these tools are actually important, but I just want to ask you, are they actually enough to give you the freedom that you are truly seeking? Now, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to share a chart that actually challenges the notion that traditional retirement accounts are going to be sufficient. And if you are like most professionals, especially those in the AE space, you've been hopefully diligently putting some money into a retirement account. Maybe you've built up a solid real estate portfolio as well. But I do want you to think about the limitations of those kinds of traditional plans. So you start with the retirement the plan, the IRA, the 401k. They're going to be pretty reliable, but they do come with some restrictions. There is a cap on how much money that you're going to be able to contribute every year, and the value of that account is going to be tied directly to the performance of the stock market. So you're essentially kind of like handing control of your retirement account to the market forces. And yes, while markets generally do go up over time, we have all seen what can happen when they don't. And add to that the fact that a typical 401k withdrawal rate in retirement might not cover the lifestyle that you've worked really hard to create. And I will show you that in a chart in just a moment. Now, real estate is often seen as maybe the golden goose of retirement, but it is not without its risks. So real estate is not liquid. Sure, it's a pretty solid investment in the long run, but turning that property into cash when you want it or need it, it could take months or sometimes even years. Plus, real estate markets are very local. One economic downturn in your area, and suddenly your property isn't worth as much as you thought it was. And we shouldn't forget about the ongoing costs. So there's maintenance for that real estate, property taxes. If it's a rental property, it's going to be potential vacancies. So those operating costs are going to contribute as well. So while these traditional options they're sort of foundational, they're not the complete picture, especially for firm owners like you. And that's why today we're looking to shift our focus to what I think is the most overlooked retirement asset that you have in your portfolio, and that is your firm. Now, let's just talk about this real asset that does get overlooked. Think about it. You have spent years, maybe decades, building a practice. It's more than just a source of income. It's actually an engine of value creation. But a lot of firm owners do not realize that their business could be that most valuable retirement asset. And here's why. Unlike that 401k or the IRA, there's no contribution cap on the value of your firm. The potential for its growth is actually going to be unlimited. You have complete control over how valuable your firm becomes by improving efficiency, expanding your services, building a strong team, developing a clear market position. Every decision that you make today contributes to the future value of your business. And what's more, your firm will give you something that 401k or that real estate you own that you can't get. It's you have total control. You can control its growth, you control how it's operating, and you can actively shape its future value. So when you have the right planning, your firm has the potential to generate much more than some passive returns. It can be sold, it can be transitioned to new owners, it could be retained as a cash flowing asset. We're going to look at some of these things. So let's imagine a future where you've built your firm into something that can run without you. Clients keep coming in, projects continue smoothly, your leadership team is thriving, you're no longer bound by the firm, but the firm continues to generate value for you. That's a form of financial security. It's a form of freedom that is difficult to achieve through traditional investments alone. And that's why your firm should be treated as one of the most significant pillars of your retirement strategy. It's not just about accumulating wealth. It's about designing a business that can be transitioned in a way that rewards you for all the work that you've put in over the years. So we're going to ask our first poll question. So Susan, if you can, just let's go ahead and launch. I have 4 poll questions today, and the sooner we get to them, the sooner we're going to be able to get to the Q&A. But I want to just know from the group that's here today, do you contribute to a retirement account? And if so, what kind? Is it a 401k? Is it a simplified employee pension plan or a simple plan or a traditional IRA? Maybe you just contribute to a Roth IRA. I'm sorry, I don't have this as multi-select because some of you probably have multiple ones, but let's just say the majority of whatever if you are using that, what does it look like? And maybe Susan, after you feel people have slowed down here, let's go ahead and oh, looks like you're sharing the results. So terrific. So over 50% of you, 54% are in a 401k. That is terrific. So undoubtedly, unless you're got a self-employed 401k, which you can do actually, it's probably employee directed, and your employer might be contributing to that as well. And you are probably the employer in many cases. That's followed by the simple plans, traditional IRAs, 27%. 10% have a Roth IRA. They are very interesting, though. You might consider that on top of it. And almost 10% of you have nothing going on. And I'm going to be speaking to that in just a moment here. So let's stop sharing that. And how do I stop that one? And let's just kind of move on. Before I dive, though, into the details of how you can plan for your succession, I do want to talk about a few common misconceptions that I hear very often. It really holds the firm owners back from starting this critical process. So the first misconception is, hey, I work alone. There is no reason to consider a succession plan. I can't even imagine having a successor. It's just, for me, it's a lifestyle business. And it's not just about passing on your firm. It's just about ensuring that when you are ready to stop or you want to step away, that you're going to be able to do this smoothly and get some financial security. So even a lifestyle business often has value. You have client relationships that you have developed, maybe some intellectual property, and don't dismiss some of the things that you do in your firm to run a project from beginning to end. That's part of your IP. You'll have a reputation, probably in your geographic area, that should be sound. This can be monetized or it can be transitioned. A solid plan will ensure that even a sole proprietor can step away on your own terms and not leaving money and opportunity on the table. I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with a small firm owner, sole proprietor in Georgia, who was at that age, and it suddenly occurred to him, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do at this point. So please, just because you're a sole proprietor, don't think that you don't have some potential there. So misconception number 2 is it's only necessary when you're close to retirement. And the reality is planning for succession is about building value in your firm over time. So the earlier you start this process, the more options you're going to have. It's not just about preparing for an exit, but it's about designing a firm that can thrive with or without you. The third misconception is, well, I'll just sell it when I'm ready. Okay. The truth is, without careful planning, your firm may not be attractive to buyers or successors. Buyers are looking for a business that is sustainable and not overly reliant on the founder. So succession planning really allows you to create a business that holds its value whether or not you're going to be there. And the last misconception is my retirement accounts are really going to be enough for me. And you think that 401k, the IRA, that real estate, it's adequate. Now, I honestly say they are critical pieces for this puzzle. It fits together to make your post-active working life functional. But your firm is most likely the most significant asset. Without a plan to transition that asset, you are leaving potential wealth on the table. Succession planning ensures your firm is an asset that will continue to generate value long after you have stepped back. So these misconceptions are going to prevent a firm owner from just recognizing that there's some real value in succession planning. It's not just about a continuity of the firm, because you might think it doesn't need to continue. I'm done with work. I don't really care. You are going to care if you've built after 4 decades of business and you got nothing out of it other than a paycheck. What we're really talking about is maximizing the return on the years of hard work that you have invested in this business. Now, what I've done here is I've created a chart that is plotting 3 different retirement accounts. So this first one is maybe like the 9% of you in the survey who are not currently contributing to any retirement account. And I'm just saying that the first 10 years of their working life, they just said, I don't get paid enough money. I need all that cash to live the lifestyle I want to live. And it's not until they turn like 35, let's say, that they start to sock away money, pre-tax dollars from their paycheck and put it into a retirement account. And what they're doing is they're trying to make up, and they're putting in the maximums allowed by law into the 401k. And they're also getting that 5% salary match. In my model here, we're going to have the employer contributing 5% of your salary on top of that, which is a great way to bump it up. You don't get to realize that for some 40 years, let's say, or in this case, 30 years. And I'm also showing it with a compound annual growth rate of 8%, which is really something we can expect from a solid, investing in a 401k, maybe in like an S&P 500. So over the long term, we're going to see about 8% growth. So by the time that individual is 65 years old, that retirement account has a balance of about $3.5 million. But that's going to spin off interest that they can pull out, leaving the balance intact of about $175,000 a year. But that's in 2040 in my model. And since that is 16 years from today, that's really the equivalent of having a salary that is somewhere, when you index it, between $94,000 and $128,000. So if you imagine today getting a paycheck for $128,000 a year, that's what your 2040 retirement is going to look like. Now, if you also roll in at that point in time, maybe Social Security benefits, you might be ending up with something close to, on average, about 75% of what your salary is today. These are averages. Now, this yellow line is a worker who realized the value of socking away money for retirement from their very first paycheck, but they were only taking out the minimums from their salary. Younger workers have lower paying salaries, and if you combine that with their lack of awareness for retirement, the guy we showed earlier, the guy with the waited 10 years, they're not really thinking about retirement, but this person had a little bit more responsibility. So this well-meaning professional contributing the minimum from every one of the paychecks over that 40-year period has a balance that's actually $3.6 million. It's 3% better than that person who started 10 years, but really not a whole lot different, is it? So I want to show you what things look like if you were, in fact, disciplined from a early age, started right at 25 in this case. Let's just using that as a number when you start working your full-time job, taking the maximum allowed by law for each of those years, and you project that, in this case, from the model starts at 2000 right up to a retirement age in 2040. So you get a 40-year period. The 401k, along with that employer match, earning the 8% compounded growth rate, you ended up with $6.2 million in that account. And that income ends up giving you $300,000 a year. So again, if you did reverse index that to our 2024 dollars, that is about a $200,000 salary today. So just imagine 16 years from now, you're making what is equivalent to $200,000. I don't know if that looks good to you or not. But that individual who did not do that, the two below the 6.2 million, they actually experienced an opportunity cost of $2.6 million. Now I'm going to hear people say, yeah, Steve, but that person who, they didn't take the maximum, or they delayed it 10 years, they invested that money for 40 years, they got some use out of that money. And that's going to be true. The money they did take home was taxed. And even if it was used to pay down some other kinds of debt, like a student loan, or maybe invest in something alternative, there's no way the upside would equal the $2.6 million they lost out on that 401k and all the effects of compound interest. You could just see that compound interest in the last 10-year period really go to work. In so many webinars, I've mentioned my belief that every expense, every time you spend $1, you should think of that as an investment in something. You should look at what is the return that you got from it. Some of these things are going to be unquantifiable, like the pleasure you get from spending money on an amazing vacation. But your salary really ought to have provided enough for things like that. Now, my consultancy is called The Well-Designed Firm, and I take the notion of good design very seriously. And I'd like to just discuss designing your firm to have the long-term value. So let's start by thinking about how maybe you design a building. There's going to be emphasis on durability and sustainability, and we make sure our structures can stand the test of time, withstand the elements, be energy efficient for the years to come. So the same kind of thinking applies to your business. When we talk about durability in business, we're really asking, is the firm designed to last, not just for the next couple of years, but for the long haul? Durability means your firm can withstand some external pressures, whether that's economic downturns, shifts in the market, weather problems that are experiencing more and more frequently, and I apologize for any of you who have been living through that recently, or even internal changes like the kinds of transition in leadership that we're going to look at. Key elements of a durable business will include diversifying your client base. So just like you don't want to rely on a single building material, right? You don't want to rely on a single source of income. Firms that depend on one or two big clients are really vulnerable. A diverse client base will protect against downturns in specific sectors. And I know this from firsthand experience because I was working at SOM in 1989 when the stock market crashed, and the Chicago office at that time of SOM was 100% speculative office buildings. And it died overnight at that firm. And the firm was hit really hard back then. And they learned their lesson. They've recovered quite well from that. Next up is your team. Your firm shouldn't be reliant on one or two people. The goal is just creating a structure where your team can thrive without constant oversight from you, the owner, or some key individual. The firm should be able to run itself just like that building runs efficiently, hopefully with very little maintenance. A business thinking mindset means you look at the needs of the marketplace. You'll take a look at where are your skills, what are your interests, and where can you satisfy the needs of the market and deliver some value into the marketplace. And as shifts occur in the technology and in shifts in the marketplace, the more offerings that you can provide, the more resilient your business will become. This is one of my favorite. I always work with my clients to help them define their unique selling proposition. So if all your firm does is look at the list of standard services that the AIA might provide you, you are missing out on an opportunity to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. There are countless talented professionals out there that your clients or your prospects can choose from. You have to be absolutely clear what separates you from that competition. And when a prospect asks you, hey, why should I hire you over one of your competitors? It's already probably too late. They should always be aware of what separates you from the rest. A resilient firm must be in constant marketing mode. You need to put marketing on your weekly, monthly agendas. Smart marketing is a constant process of refinement. However, a lot of firms think all they need to do is do good work, and all those referrals are just going to be rolling in, and that's a sufficient way to drive future business. And I've spoken on this topic ad nauseum in other webinars, but please just move marketing up the priority list in your firm and go ahead and send me some thank you notes in the future. A sustainable firm is one that grows steadily without overextending itself. It is financially healthy with controlled expenses. It has some predictable revenue, much like building, again, this building analogy where you're going to design for energy efficiency. The firm should be designed for financial efficiency, where the resources that you are investing and that's your employees and your technology, you're going to get some constant return. And the marketing expenses, you're going to get constant returns over time. And think long term. You are not just building for today. You are building something that can continue to provide value for years, whether or not you're going to still be in that picture. So we have Susan, our second poll question right now, which is, I spoke about this in the previous slide, does your firm have a unique selling proposition? So it's either no, like, nah, we think we're similar to our competition, or our team is what makes us special, or our fees are less than our competition. That's no. Yes, it is clear from the moment someone visits our website, every aspect of our business exudes our unique selling proposition, and we know our competition intimately. We can state what is our unique selling proposition in less than 30 seconds. Or I don't really care. All that matters for me is let's just have happy clients and do great work. And look at you, you're all pandering to me today. Only one person so far is saying they don't care. So we got two now. Okay, so share that. So looks like 2/3 of you, congratulations, phenomenal. I would actually love to hear some of you send me an email and tell me what you believe is your unique selling proposition. 1/3 of you don't have that, and 2% of you don't care. So sorry to hear that, but let's move on. Okay, so we're going to talk about efficiency, and we're going to talk about profitability. They tend to go hand in hand, and it's really these are foundational for every successful business. So again, in architecture, when we talk about buildings, we're going to talk about efficiency. How does the building operate? How do we maximize maybe its output while minimizing waste? So these same kinds of concepts are going to apply to your firm. Operational efficiency is how your firm functions on a day-to-day basis. Are your processes smooth, streamlined, and repeatable? So firms that are being bogged down by inefficiencies, they lose time. And as you know, in this business, time is money, and time lost to inefficiencies, it's going to be a direct hit to your profitability. Most of us just look at it as the status quo. It's just a hurdle we have to get over every time we work on a project. But these little incremental inefficiencies add up to have significant impact on our firms. One of the simplest ways to increase efficiency is through standardization. So just like we have standardized systems for construction documents or in our building codes, you need to standardize your internal processes. Even if you're a single person firm, don't just have it in your head. Need to, standardize these things. Everything from your project management, your client communication, how you do your billing, how you how you track your finances. When you have a system that is standardized, then your team can work autonomously without constant oversight or reinventing the wheel every time a new project starts. Add, efficiency ties directly to profitability, as I said. So when your firm operates efficiently, you're able to take on more projects without necessarily increasing any of your overhead. But profitability isn't just about taking on more work. It's just about making sure that every one of your projects, maybe it is budgeted correctly and it's priced correctly for your client, that you're not going to lose any money. Maybe there's some hidden costs or scope creep. So having these systems in place to help you ensure that you're not going to let those things happen is going to make sure your firm's not just efficient, but it's going to be profitable. Okay, so I'm going to move on here. So lastly, let's just talk about something that architects deeply understand, and that's the importance of aesthetics. We know how much a beautifully designed building, by the way, I didn't just say a beautiful building, I said a beautifully designed building can attract attention, respect, even desire. And the same is true for your firm's brand. Think about your firm's brand as the public face of your business. It is what future clients, potential partners, even buyers or leaders, this is what they are going to notice about your company. So just like a well-designed building, your brand should be able to stand out. So what makes the brand attractive? First, it's going to be consistency. A firm's brand must be clear and consistent across all of your platforms, from your website and your social media presence to your client communications, your project portfolios, even your business cards, if you still use those, even the clothes you wear. When your messaging is cohesive, it's going to create trust, and it's trust that actually builds value. There's also reputation. So a firm's reputation is like the quality of the materials that you will specify for a building. And if you're known for delivering high quality work, staying on budget, providing an exceptional client experience, you will naturally attract more opportunities. The more attractive your firm is to clients, the more attractive it is to potential buyers or future leaders who want to be part of something that is beautiful and successful. Branding is also about differentiation, which is that unique selling proposition we just hit on. And so, like many buildings might have a unique style or a feature that might make it stand out or make it be memorable, your firm needs something that sets it apart. So what is your niche? What are you known for? A firm with a very clear identity, a specific market focus, maybe it's a standout design philosophy, it just becomes more valuable to somebody looking to take over that firm or invest in that firm. So in the end, a firm with a strong, attractive brand will always be more valuable. It's not just about the work you do. It's about how you are perceived outside of the office. So just like that beautiful designed building increases in value over time, as we hope, so does a firm that is well crafted, well maintained. So I'm going to move on here to take some time here. When we talk about this transitioning your ownership, the very first step is let's define what's your vision? What are your exit goals going to look like? It's very hard for people who are just starting out in business to already think about what their exit's going to look like. That's what you have to do. This is where everything starts. So just like maybe if you're designing a building, you're going to have an image, a vision of what's going to be that you're trying to create. Maybe it comes after a hard concept period, but you know what that vision is. So what do you want your exit to look like? How is it going to function? And this is how I love the alignment of designing buildings and designing firms, especially for architects. So start by asking yourself, what do I want my role to look like? depending on your age, 5, 10, 15 years down the road? Are you looking for a complete exit? Maybe you want to see yourself staying involved, maybe just at a reduced capacity. You want to travel more and you don't want to be, 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week like some of you are from my last survey, last webinar. So you're going to retire entirely? You want to stay on as a mentor in the firm, or if the firm's of that type, a board member? By the way, these ideas I'm talking about today aren't restricted to just large firms that have that kind of hierarchy and kind of a management team. These are also applicable to very small, quiet, sort of informal firms. So next thing is about your firm's future. What do you want that firm to look like when you're not there? Do you want it to continue growing? Is it going to stay the same size? Maybe you have a problem with it pivoting to new kinds of markets? Or you want to stay focused in the current niche? These decisions are really going to be critical because they're going to shape what that succession plan looks like. So a firm that's designed to grow beyond you, where you see the firm today, needs a very different strategy than a firm that you just want to keep stable like it is today, maybe even shrink without you. And finally, do talk about the end game. What does success look like for you? Is it financial security? Selling the firm at the highest price you can get? Is it ensuring that your firm's legacy continues with the same values and missions that were very important to you when you established the firm? So defining these particular goals up front will guide every one of the decisions that you make for this transition process. So you've defined your vision. So the next one is this financial planning and the firm's valuation. That's kind of where the rubber meets the road, because your firm needs to be financially prepared for a transition. The first part of financial planning is understanding your value. You've built something over the years, but do you know how much it's actually worth? A proper valuation looks at more than just what is your annual revenue. I'm going to give you real examples of an experience of what it looks like to find the value. It might look at things like, is your firm consistently profitable? Are your margins healthy? Do you have long-term clients or contracts that might have some predictable income streams for you? What proprietary processes or what kind of design IP might you have? What kinds of tools do you use that might add value? Getting a clear, objective valuation is key to understanding what you can expect in the future if you're going to do a sale or a transition. It's not just about what you think your firm is worth. It's about what the market says it's worth. Once you understand the value, your next step is financial planning for that transition. So if you're going to be selling internally to employees or key members of your leadership group, how are they going to finance that acquisition? Will it be all upfront cash? Is it going to be a phased buyout? We're going to look at that in a moment, because the example I'm giving you is a phased buyout, but you have to be able to afford a phased buyout. If you're selling to an external buyer, are you financially prepared for maybe some of the tax implications that might be, or even the legal fees that might come associated with these sales? And don't forget your own personal financial planning, your home economics, right? How much do you need for the sale of your firm if you want to retire comfortably? How will the timing of that sale impact your own personal cash flows and retirement goals? Sometimes it's about college tuition or other major purchases that might need to be made by you for your life's goals. It's just important to remember that preparing for the financial aspects of a transition, it's just as critical as the ownership side of your business. And without an understanding of your firm's value and a plan for how that transaction is going to unfold, you could be leaving money on the table, or maybe you're just going to run into some real big hurdles here. So let's dive into, oh my gosh, I'm so far behind schedule. Transition model. So there's really several paths. I'm going to try to make the slide go a little bit faster here. These are just 3 particular models. These are the most common models I know of. I might have 4 here. So the first is an internal sale. to an employee or some of the members of the leadership team, it's a very popular choice because it allows your firm to continue to operate with the same culture and the same vision. You're already all aligned. It's going to be a much smoother transition because these new owners are already in the firm. They understand your operations and your clients and how the processes work. But they're going to require some financing. Maybe it's a phased buyout, or you're going to have to give them a loan. So where's that loan going to come from? And your team's probably not going to have the upfront capital to buy the firm outright. So you're going to need to accept some payments over time. But the upside to the internal sale is it keeps the firm in very familiar hands. Downside is you might not receive the full value of your firm at all or immediately. And an example I'm going to give you is it was not received in full, which is probably common. So another option is the external sale, firm to an outside buyer, often a larger firm or a more healthier firm that's looking to expand to a new geographic market or into services that you provide that they don't. And the advantage of that external sale, it's going to provide a higher upfront payout because the external buyer typically has more working capital. It means you're probably going to be able to walk away with close to the full value of your firm when the deal closes. But there's going to be some challenges. It's going to change the leadership of the firm and the culture and the styles, and that is going to have an impact. And some of you really have to think hard about that. It's also going to be a longer process because they're going to have to do a lot of due diligence. And you might actually spend a year or two working on that, and then that deal dies, and you're going to have to start it all over again. So it is, in my estimation, so much smarter to think about people that you are already working with and know you very well. There's the ESOP plan. I'm not going to really go into that because they are much more complex. They require more money and oversight, and there's some other regulations associated with it. But if you're the right size firm, please go have the employee group really invest in the firm and have all of your goals are much better aligned. There's also family succession. But that has its own problems. If you have a child or a relative who is being trained in the business, but it might have an impact on other employees who are already there, who thought that they were already in line. So you got to think about these. We don't have time to do that because they're the big outliers. We're going to have another poll question, Susan. Does your firm have a formalized succession plan? So great. Yes, we have. No, we don't have a formalized succession plan. Yes, we have a formalized plan, or your role in the current firm that you're working for, you're not owning the firm, I don't know. And my main is it's formalized, okay? Written down plan, probably discussed quarterly or no less than annually and monitored. So I'm watching these results come in. We can probably move ahead on that, but it's like 70% of you do not have it. 23% of you do, 6% of you probably work for someone else at the moment and are thinking about opening a firm in the future, and you don't know. So thank you for that. I got to try and get a little faster. How do I close that? There we go. Okay, cool. So we're going to talk about the team because that's one of the most important aspects of a smooth transition is cultivating leadership within the firm. So you need to think of leadership as something that you grow or you nurture and you develop it over time. Just like our projects don't come out of our head instantly, right? They will be a long labor of love before you actually can manifest this great piece of architecture. So you don't just sit around waiting for a leader to emerge. Typically, you're going to create some paths for leadership to mature within your team. And the first step in cultivating the leadership is just identifying potential leaders early on. It should be kind of obvious. Look for people who show initiative. They have problem-solving skills. They have a genuine interest in the success of the firm, not just the projects that they're working on. These are the individuals who will be able to carry the firm forward. But identifying them isn't all you need to do. You need to actively mentor these individuals and help them develop. And just like you might mentor a junior staff member in technical skills about being a good architect or being an engineer, mentoring future leaders is about teaching them the business side of running a firm. That includes, project management, client relationships, financial oversight, strategic planning. The more they understand how a firm operates as a business, the better prepared they're going to be to take on that leadership role when the time comes, and the more likely they're going to want to be that person. And remember, cultivating leadership isn't about preparing someone for your job. It's about creating a culture where everybody understands the importance of leadership at every single level at your firm, ensuring that there's this sort of pipeline of talent that's ready to step up when needed. Sometimes the timing isn't right, and a potential leader needs kind of ownership before you're ready. So having that pipeline means you have options, and you're not going to be coerced to make sort of decisions prematurely just because somebody's turning the screws on you. I've got 10 minutes left. I can't believe this. Okay, I'm going to pass through this slide right now because I really want to get to the good stuff because I want to have questions for you. But any of you want the slide deck, you'll you can have that downloaded. But we talked about some of these anyway. So what I'm going to do is delegation. I talk about delegation in a lot of my webinars, and it's not just about handing off tasks. You really have to entrust key responsibilities to these future leaders. The goal here is, again, creating a firm that's not relying on you functionally day after day. You want to build those systems and those processes that let your team operate smoothly, even if you're not going to be there. And then there's this progressive delegation. Give them some small things to take on. Maybe it's just approving a project budget, or maybe managing a particular client relationship. Then you build up to the larger responsibilities, like overseeing that strategic initiative that you wanted to launch this year, or some sort of business development thing. So yeah, you keep adding it on more and more. They don't feel overwhelmed by things. You're there for them. And then what happens is your role ends up shifting from the decision maker to you're the coach. You're helping guide them through some challenging situations, and they get to feel their leadership strength happening here. And the whole idea is always to create a firm that's self-sustaining. There should be no indispensable person in your company. It has to be able to operate without you, and any individual needs to go there. So here we're going to go now. I'm going to share the specific information about a client leadership transition, but I'm going to do this by returning to an earlier discussion about how your firm is the most important investment you're going to make. So we're going to look at the exit of a founding partner and how that firm was valued, how much money, in this case, he received upon his exit, and what the economics of his original investment looked like. So in this case, this is a 10-year-old firm. The young firm, the founder needed to leave. He had a personal situation. He had to exit. And the firm had a buy-sell agreement that outlined 3 valuation methods. And they were very explicit in how they are to be calculated. And after applying the 3 methods, they were going to take the averages. So the first method was, we're going to use a multiple of revenue per full-time employee. It is a KPI, a key performance indicator I always want, that I talk about in my webinars, and I want my clients to understand. So how much revenue is earned by each of the employees in your firm? And in this case, the low end estimate valued the firm at just $2.8 million. But the high end was using a multiplier of 1.5. And it said, based on they were having $187,000 of net revenue per full-time employee. And the last time I looked, by the way, at AIA statistics, something like $164,000 was considered sort of the mean in our. If I ever see a firm with a $200,000 net revenue per full-time employee, this is a firm that's clearly profitable. It's doing a lot of the right things. It is a high-performing firm. So they went from a low of 2.8 to a high of $5.6 million. So next they had using a multiple of whatever their firm's operating profit was over the past 3 years. So it's not just a moment in time. It happened to be a bad year or a good year. Let's look at a 3-year period, and we'll calculate that it was about $950,000. And so when you take the multiplier of 4x, that was the calculation, 4 times that, the firm was at a $3.8 million, but it was all the way up at 6x, as much as $5.7 million. Then the third and final valuation was just using what are the comps for similar firms in their geographic area. And these are typically not published figures. But there are brokerage firms, there are M&A advisories, there's other data that's available to valuation professionals to establish what are the current multipliers. And in this case, the low estimate was put at 8 times the net revenue, 0.8 times the net revenue. That put the firm at about 2.9 million, and the high was 1.2, meaning it was 4.5 million. So when they averaged all of these, the low end averaged at 3.2. The high end was averaged at 5.3. The final number, what was put in the calculation, it was not a fighting match over anything here, was 4.232. $4,232,000. That was the firm's valuation. And so that's the final averaged valuation. Since the seller had 50% ownership, his shares were valued at $2.1 million. And there was an extra discount that was applied since the founder was going to be selling his shares to 2 of the non-equity partners. It was decided that they were strong contributors to the firm's success. They were key players in the success of their firm, and that they shouldn't be penalized by paying prime dollar on it. So the seller was gracious and recognized their contributions and offered a devaluation of 25%, making the sale of his shares at $1,587,000. I should mention, by the way, that this firm did have cash on hand. Cash on hand is not considered in the valuation. The firm had these cash reserves of $748,000. The shareholder agreement talks about distributing the excess cash pro rata. And there was also discussing what is the working capital requirements for 3 months. So let's leave in the business 3 months worth of working capital. The rest is excess cash. So the partner received 50% of that, which ended up being $124,000. So in all, the seller gets $1,711,000 for his 50% ownership in the firm. Now, the backstory is that the 2 founding partners each invested $50,000. They did that 10 years earlier when they created the firm. They wrote a check. I talked about investing $1 million. They only had to scratch and find $50,000 and put that in their firm. And if you look at this as an investment, that $50,000 had a 32x return. It was growing at a compound annual growth rate of 42%. As we saw earlier, the S&P 500 index fund had an 8% growth rate over the same 10 years. That $50,000 would have been $108,000. Creating a firm is a high-risk, high-reward investment. If he didn't consider his firm as an investment, that would have an opportunity cost of about $1.5 million. And lastly, the buy-sell agreement outlined that the firm could spread those payments out over a 5-year period. So on the day of closing, he received 2 checks. The first was the first of 5 annual payments of $317,000. And in addition, he received his half of the excess cash, which was $124,000. Okay, so I do apologize. I'm going to skip my takeaways. We kind of went through these. I want to get back to Q&A. I don't know, Susan and Sean, if we can go on for QA run a little bit longer, but I do want to thank my friends at BQE for inviting me to speak with you today. I just want to encourage everybody attending today, please say yes to a poll question. Let the folks at BQE just give you a demo. Susan, if you want to just launch the poll question now, that's fine. You can leave it up while we have maybe a question or two. Get a demo of their phenomenal business and project management platform. It's called BQE Core. I can promise you that the time that you spend looking at it is going to be well spent. When you're trying to put value into a company, as I mentioned earlier, the technology systems that you have as the backbone of your company are incredibly powerful leveraging tools to build a valuable firm. So whether you're using a system or not today, please just say yes to this. Let those folks at BQE give you a demo. And if you can run on long with questions, please, I'm happy to stay here, Susan and Sean and Courtney, for as long as people have questions. And with that, I'll leave my closing slide up here for you. You can leave the poll running. And whoops.
Thank
So